Can you tell me some basics? Can you tell me how many agents, investigators you've assigned to the case?
May be able to do that, but I'd have to get back to you.
Can you tell me who the lead investigator is?
Off the top of my head, no.
This is the most important issue in front of the country the last 6 weeks. You don't know who's heading up the case? Who the lead investigator is?
At this juncture, no, I do not know who the...
Can you get that information to us? We'd like to know. We'd like to know how many people you've assigned to look into this situation.
The questioner was Congressman Jim Jordan. He was asking the FBI director at an oversight hearing on Thursday. Joining me around the table, Peter Baker, White House correspondent for The New York Times, Nia Malika Henderson, national political reporter for The Washington Post, A.B. Stoddard, associate editor for The Hill newspaper, and Ray Suarez, senior correspondent for the NewsHour on PBS. Thank you. What does it say about the intensity of the investigation at the FBI into whether anything illegal went on at the IRS if the FBI director can't tell you how many people are looking into it or who's running the thing?
Yeah, it's certainly bad prep for your congressional hearing. These are the kinds of questions you know you're going to get. You just walk in there prepared to answer them. And you understand the intensity of the interest on the Hill, even if it's not intense in your own building. So you should certainly match that.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue it might not be the most interesting thing to across, but
yeah, I mean, you had President Obama come out and say that he was going to get to the bottom of it. He was outraged. And then you have the FBI director saying that he doesn't know anything about that. I think we've seen this pattern of folks going in front of these congressional hearings, not being prepared, and in some ways treating the folks on the Hill with something like veiled contempt. I mean, you certainly saw that with Eric Holder. But I think in this situation, it doesn't do the president any good. He's going to take some political heat for this if he isn't able to get the IRS in order.
And it's a little broader than that, too, because you do hear conservatives saying, he's always saying, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and they never get to the bottom of it.
Right. Peter's prepared. They have to, it's their job we pay them to be prepared for those questions, but they also should feign some interest. One of the most damning things, actually, is that the Tea Party groups that were targeted by the Internal Revenue Service for added scrutiny actually haven't heard from the FBI. So this is really a dropped ball and not a high priority. And it's something that's going to fuel contributions for Republicans in turnout in the midterm election. So if Democrats care about that, they need to wake up.
You know, let's not forget the preamble to the question. When Congressman Jordan said, this is the most important issue facing the country for the last 6 weeks, and I thought, really?
Right. Yeah.
It is? The country doesn't think so. Yes, Nia Malika said thinly veiled or veiled contempt.
Right.
The veil is slipping, and they can put this fire out and shorten the timeline.
FBI director is halfway out the door. We should say that. But I mean, if you're going to go up and represent an administration that has promised to get to the bottom of it and see if anything illegal happened, regardless of how important you think the subject is, the president did say we're going to have an investigation.
And he's lengthening the timeline on this thing. If it is a fire that needs to be put out, if you're in the White House and you think this is a fire that needs to be put out, well, then put it out. Don't give more shots of opportunity. Don't give more free throws to your opposition. And that seems to be what's happening.
Doing lots of free throws these days, I think. Let me read you something that the Senate Majority Leader said in Capitol Hill Thursday, 6-month anniversary of Newtown. And he said, this fight is not over. It's just beginning, the fight being for some measure of gun control. It's just beginning. In order to be effective, the bill that passes the Senate must have background checks and not a watered-down version of background checks. We're not going to let the forces of an extreme minority water down and damage the content of this bill. I understand that on the 6-month anniversary of this, you need to say we are still on the job. And we know that Joe Biden, or at least reports are that Joe Biden is going to do some kind of gun event this week, trying to push Congress. How realistic is it that the Senate is going to take up and pass a gun control bill this year?
It's not going to happen in the immediate future. They're focused on immigration, as you were talking with Senator Menendez. They don't want to get these things confused at the moment. That's a big lift already. Can they turn around enough to do it later in the year? They think so. They hope so. But at the very least, it's a good issue that they like to talk about.
Surely they must be targeting somebody somewhere saying, how much to get you to vote yes? I mean, I don't think Joe Biden doing another event or even Harry Reid saying we're going to do this. Don't they need to be
Right, but it's hard to know who they're targeting. I mean, you've got Jeff Flake, who early on seemed to have some blowback because of his vote. He doesn't look like he's going to change his mind. Kelly Ayotte, same thing. Those 4 Democratic senators. I mean, the question is it better to be where they are, or is it better to flip-flop? I mean, can you imagine if they flip-flop?
Well, that's why don't they need a little, what graph can we put in that makes this bill sufficiently different from the one you said no to get you to say yes?
It's far too soon to get considerable support, but they need to mark the anniversary of Newtown, and they need to keep pushing if they're going to be any match for the NRA. As for the senators in question, they're under too much pressure right now on immigration reform, especially Republicans. But anyone who's running as a Democrat in a red state is under too much pressure right now. The fall is too late. It'll be consumed by debt ceiling and budget battles. And then we're in the campaign for midterm elections.
Right.
So this is something that needs to happen quietly. Manchin and Toomey put a compromise together in a matter of 5 days. They didn't have the time to put in the work.
I talked to folks in Reed's office. They very much understand that this is a long game. One of the things he said was background checks will get done at some point. It's only a matter of time. They feel like it probably won't be this Congress. It might not be next Congress. But if you look at the history of gun control, it's taken a long time for these individual bills to actually pass.
But when they do finally pass, they are sometimes pale imitations of what was first proposed. And time is your enemy if you're one of the pro-background check legislators right now. Yes, there's a flurry of coverage around the 6-month date. There'll be another one around the year date, and it's likely nothing will be done by then either.
You're smack in the middle of an election year at that point. So let me turn you to immigration, just because I watched I was asked by somebody who was doing an interview, like what was going on with immigration reform. I said, actually, it sort of seems like a hot mess right now to me, watching the Senate floor, because the whole week was consumed with how many votes will we require to pass an amendment? I mean, give me your take on whether you think this bill's in trouble.
The math that I'm told is not looking good. The effort to try to garner, of Senator Schumer and others, to try to garner 70 votes to push the House could really torpedo the bill because it could make it so restrictive that you lose other wings of support on the left. So it's a very fragile coalition. And over on the House, you know that House Speaker John Boehner and Paul Ryan and other leaders are committed to doing something, but the rank and file is not interested. And in the end, it's a math game, and it just doesn't look like it can pass the House.
I think that's right. It's more fragile than I think we thought 2-3 weeks ago, and it seems to be getting more fragile the closer we get to hearings on the Senate. And I think also we haven't seen the opposition really coalesce yet. I mean, they have gone out there in fits and starts, but we haven't seen a real big anti-immigration push yet, and I think we will.
But they're there. The opposition is there, and the kind of amendments that are being brought up are not small things. They're not so-called easily dismissed poison pills. They're big things that big blocks inside the Congress are really upset about. This business about language. Language is a ticking time bomb. They haven't even started to discuss it yet. But those are the emotional parts of what undergirds the national debate about immigration. We haven't even gotten to yet. It's all about technical, reaching targets, 90% interdiction before this other thing happens 6 months later. That's the non-emotional stuff. You wait till they get to the other things.
So it sounds like maybe not going to happen. I mean, Harry Reid said we're going to get this thing done by July 4th. I'm thinking, wow, wait, 2014? What year?
We're still in the preseason. We haven't even really gotten to the interesting thing. This is all about positioning, assuming a bill does pass, positioning for the negotiations with the House. It's all about a conference committee later on or whatever mechanism they use to hash out their differences. And you're trying to see basically people position against what they think the House will do. So you get John Cornyn and the conservatives saying we need to make it more palatable to the House. You get the Chuck Schumer and the liberals saying basically we're going to have the maximum liberal position because it's only going to get more conservative as we end up making concessions to the House.